Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Hi everyone, how are you? Hope you're well. It's 2 a.m. in Dubai, and I was asleep, but all of a sudden I got up, and this particular topic came to mind. So here I am, sharing with you some reflections with regards to the idea of authenticity. When we are authentic, we perform at a much higher level. When we are authentic, we flow through what we do, as opposed to fake it. And we live in a world, I think Robert Kiyosaki has a book called Fake coming out, or has already been, it is out. And I have read a lot of Robert Kiyosaki's work and enjoyed his work. And I'd really like to read this book of his called Fake. And I believe Robert argues that many things in the world are fake, and particularly I believe he picks up on the monetary side of it, reflecting the US dollar and how it's a fiat currency, which is formal talk for it's based on nothing. And maybe that's a topic for another video offering, how the main currency we all use is actually based on nothing. But it's not the topic for today. One of the best examples, I believe, of authenticity that I have felt, and I think many of you also have felt, is teachers. Those of us that have been lucky and fortunate enough to go to school will always remember a teacher that was truly a teacher. So you got teachers, and especially today, you got employees that work in schools that happen to teach, that happens to be their job description. That's not a teacher. A teacher teaches, and he or she enjoys that process. One of the teachers that I was so lucky to go to a school where we had a very, very high percentage of real teachers. I'd say 99% of them were real teachers. Whereas today, when I deal with schools, work with schools, I notice that percentage is not as high as before. And students in school know this instinctively. They know a teacher from an employee. An employee is just doing their job. They're clocking in the hours, they're waiting for their payday, and they can't wait to get out. They're not going to do anything that they don't need to do. They're not going to stay behind school to help a kid like myself struggling with maths, like my teacher did. God rest his soul, Allah yarhamah. And I believe mercy is for everyone, regardless of whatever faith they may follow. My mathematics teacher in school, Brian Garvey, strong, beautiful Glaswegian soul. First time I ever heard a Glaswegian accent, and I ended up. Let me first explain Brian. Brian or Mr. Garvey was a brilliant mathematics teacher, a true teacher, and my year had three categories. Shall we say a challenged one, a middle one, and an advanced one. I was in somehow the middle class, and he was the teacher of the middle standard of mathematics, and I was really struggling. And he could really see I was trying to do it. So he'd stay behind school and coach me. I think we'd do it like half an hour a day, every single day. And when it came to my high school exams, what we refer to here as, or in my school, as my GCSEs in mathematics. I was predicted a D. I think that was the that was the best my brain at the time was expected to perform. But with his help, they said, okay, now that you're doing a lot of well, that was pushed up later on to a C. I actually, on the day of the exam, got a B, and everybody was shocked. And it was a really really surprising result, and one I look back at fondly. And until today, I enjoy numbers in a nice way. Um, Brian was a real teacher, and because of his real teaching, he changed my life. I ended up going to the same university that he went to. I'm a proud graduate of Glasgow University. Any Glasgow University fellow graduates out there, be proud, be who you are. Um, Another example I think of authenticity is leadership. This is a really interesting one. We have a lot of leaders about. I'm not talking, well, any leader, whether it's leading a school, leading a business, and ultimately leading a life, which is, I think, where I'd like to head with this video offering. When we lead, so there's two categories. There's actually leading, and then there's the appearance of leadership. So we can call it the real leadership or the fake leadership, or something similar to that. If we're leading, it's just based on my experience so far in my studies. If we're leading, genuinely leading, we are going into something unknown. We may have a start and we may have some type of end in mind, but we have no idea what the middle is. And that's where the leading comes in. And when we have no idea what's going to happen, we are in the dark. We are genuinely, you have no idea. And you're walking into things that you have to deal with and be honest in knowing or not knowing how to deal with them. That's leadership. Leadership is saying something that nobody wants to say, seeing something that everybody sees but is too afraid to say it because of the unknown consequences. If you're leading something, if you're involved in a field of work where you're leading something that really isn't a mystery anymore, it's the same thing, and it has been the same thing for a long time, that's not leadership. It may be something beautiful, but it's not leadership. Stop calling it leadership and walking about calling yourself a leader. You are not a leader because everything is familiar now. You're not leading anything into the dark. Whether you're working, you're in an office and you're working with a boss, or you're working in a department, or working with a boss in another department, where you just know this person is causing a lot of trouble one way or another. They're talking harshly, they're not handing in their work on time, they're not coming in on time. You just know that there's an issue there. But if somebody's not saying anything and holding that person accountable and being prepared to handle any consequence until somebody approaches that person is not being led. You, who are the HR head, are not leading. You have the appearance of leadership, but you're not leading until you have that uncomfortable discussion. Marriage, being a married person, people who are married or with a partner will understand that sometimes things need to be said to hold each other accountable. Someone does something wrong. We have to, for the relationship to be led to a good place, and that can be from either partner. For it to be led, we have to say things that involve an unknown response. So I know my partner may not like me saying what she did in the car park was wrong, and she's had a really bad day, and for me not to say that is not leadership. We're not leading the relationship. We always have to have these discussions repeatedly. My wife should have the ability, and I believe she does, to tell me, why I really do not agree with how you behaved and how you acted the other day. And she may not know how I'm going to respond, and that's okay. That's her leading our relationship into the unknown where anything can happen. That's just an example. We need to lead. But the minute we get, and here's the thing, most of us don't genuinely lead because it's, or we don't genuinely become authentic, because we're talking about authenticity. Most of us don't become authentic because we're not prepared to pay the price. We're not prepared to pay the price of handling the discomfort, of not knowing. And that's it goes into fear, and that's a topic in itself, I believe. So to wrap this up, being authentic is a necessity, and whether you're being an authentic teacher, an authentic leader, plays about in the same thing, and ultimately being authentically you. So I am doing my best to be authentically wa'il, myself, nobody else, to be authentic wa'il. I can give you the appearance of a wa'il, but that's different from actual wa'il. I once upon a time I used to work in the financial world, and I was paid very well. I was being trained very well. I was very well looked after, but I just knew I wasn't being who I was. Nobody needed to tell me that. I could feel that, and until I was very brave to disengage from that and say, I'm going to be who I am. I don't know what that is exactly. I know it's in that direction, and that's pretty much all I know, and I'm going to go there. And it was completely unknown. Will it work? Will it not work? Everybody called me mad. How could you leave? How could you leave a secure job? How could you are married, you got children. Are you mad? I guess the answer to that is yes. I'm not sane in an inauthentic way. I cannot live in a manner that is inauthentic for my health. It was unhealthy for me to live inauthentically. So really important, authenticity, be who you are, be brave enough to go into the unknown elements of yourself and find out. There's just no other way to do it. You can't go into these things knowing what's going to happen. That's the whole point. You don't know. How can it be a journey, an adventure, if you know what's going to happen? So be yourselves. Take the adventure of discovering who you are. I think if we all did that, we'd be all so much more compassionate, so much more kind, because we're bumping into things, everybody else is bumping into things, and we can sympathize and support each other better. So that's authentically all there is for me today, or tonight, or for this moment of time. I wish you well. I wish you all the authenticity in the world, inshallah. And until we meet again sometime soon, all the best.